Allah is the only one that can defeat your unseen enemies. If you rely on yourself, you can't overcome these things. And that's why it's really important, because one of the problems with people is they rely on themselves, like with addictions. The most successful addiction program in the world is the 12-step program. And the first step is to surrender to a higher authority. Like, I'm helpless. It's to admit that you are helpless. And that's one of the few programs that actually works for people, to do that. And that's what people have to do. If you rely on yourself, لا تكلني إلى نفسي طرفة عين. The Prophet ﷺ made the dua, do not leave me to myself for even the glance of an eye. So then he says that the authority, Iblis's authority, is on those يتولونه. They make alliances with him. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ بِهِ مُشْرِكُونَ. Or they associate with him. So that's really important. There's awliya of shaitan. Shaitan has awliya, just like the Rahman has awliya. And so he's saying that's where the authority lies. If you give him power, يتولونه, you're giving him wilaya over you by submitting to him. وكذلك يضعف كيد الهوى عن العقل إذا تقوى بالله. And like that, the plots or the strategies, the machinations of passions also weaken before reason if it's strengthened billah, through God. واستعاذ به, and they seek refuge in God. فحق العقل أن يستعيذ بالله من الهوى. So it's the duty of the intellect to seek refuge in God, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the passions. وَالشَّرَح, and from the, sharah is like greed, but it tends to be more greed for food. Sharaha. So sherihun is somebody who's a glutton. Because the food is the source of the appetitive soul's power. And that's why fasting weakens it. And that's why you're able to do things during Ramadan that you're not able to do in other times when you're fasting, because it weakens it. The Prophet ﷺ said that it's like a wija, so it's something that will protect you from your own human frailty and weaknesses by weakening the strength of the appetitive soul. So then he says, والحرص, covetousness, والأمل, and also just procrastination, hope that you can, down the road, things will change. Like the brothers of Yusuf, they said, oh, let's get rid of Yusuf and then we'll become righteous. There's people that have that attitude that I'm going to become righteous down the road. So he says, and then when Ibrahim alayhi salam said, رَبِّ يَجْعَلْ هَذَا الْبَلَدَ آمِنًا وَاجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ. Make this city safe. So again, he's using this analogy that make my soul safe. That's what Raghib's doing. He's using this as an analogy. So if you analogize the human being as a city-state, and Ibrahim sets up he's in his city, he's saying, make Mecca a safe place and avoid and divert me and my offspring from worshiping the idols. Well, what are the idols? For him, for Raghib, he's saying, القوة الشهوية القوة الغضبية. It's ما أبغض معبودا عند الله. The worst thing that's worshipped with Allah is al-hawa. So he's using it as an analogy for that. فالقوة الرديئة والإرادات الدنيئة في ذات الإنسان جارية مجرى الأصنام. So these low impulses and these contemptible volitions in the essence of the human being have the same place as the idols, the outward idols. Because you're obeying false gods. If you're disobeying Allah by obeying your nafs hawa shaitan, then you've taken them as the authority and not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's what he's saying, that وقلما تنفك نفس الإنسان عن عبادتها كما قال الله تعالى وما يؤمن أكثرهم بالله إلا وهم مشركون. And then he says, and it is rare for the soul of a human being to be free from their worship. And this is what Allah means when he says that most of them do not believe in Allah without them associating with Allah. So this is a really profound psychological approach to just, you can look at the outward meanings of all these things, and they're valid. And that's the beauty of, Ahmad Zarruq said the difference between the Batiniya and the Ahl Sunnah is the Batiniya reject the outward meanings and interpret it with these inward meanings. He said Ahl Sunnah accept both, that it has both meanings, the outward and the inward. Huwa al-awwal wal-akhir wal-zahir wal-batin. So there's the outward and the inward, and they have to be in a balance. So then he says, وَذَكَرُوا مَثَلًا آخَرَ فَقَالُوا كُلُّ إِنسَانٍ مَعْ بَدْنِهِ كَوَارٍ فِي بَلَدٍ قِيلَ لَهُ طَهِّرْ بَلَدَكَ مِنَ النَّجَاسَاتِ وَأَدِّبْ مَنْ يَقْبَلُ التَّأْدِيبَ مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَرُضْ مَنْ يَقْبَلُ الرِّيَاضَةَ مِنْ حَيَوَانَاتِهِ وَسِبَاعِهِ. So they also used another analogy, saying that every human being with his body is like the governor of a city. And it said to him, purify your city, clean your city up of all its filth and waste. And وَأَدِّبْ مَنْ يَقْبَلُ التَّأْدِيبَ مِنْ أَهْلِهِ, and discipline all of the citizens who are capable of being disciplined. وَرُضْ مَنْ يَقْبَلُ الرِّيَاضَةَ مِنْ حَيَوَانَاتِهِ وَسِبَاعِهِ, and then train those that are susceptible to training from the animals and the siba, meaning like the livestock and then the more wild animals. And some of them can be trained. We know that like lions can be trained. Lions are actually closer to dogs than cats, even though they go into the category of in the West, they're put in the same category as the cats. But the Prophet ﷺ called them dogs. And if you actually look at the lion, he's closer to a dog than a cat. Like they'll get up and they lick, they lick the person, and they can be trained in a way like the dogs can be trained. وَمَنْ عَاثَ فِيهِ وَلَمْ يَقْبَلِ التَّأْدِيبُ وَالرِّيَاضَةَ فَاحْبِسْهُ أَوْ اقْتُلْهُ وَلَكِنْ بِالْحَقِّ. And the one that sows corruption in it and doesn't accept any discipline or training, so jail him or kill him. Right? These are, in the 15th century in common law, in English common law, they had what was called outlawry, right? So the outlaw, because most places didn't have governments, and they used this common law here in the U.S., in what they called the West, where you didn't have governments still. As the westward move in the U.S., they would move west. So you had what were called the outlaws, right? And what an outlaw was a person who was encroaching on other people's persons and property. And they would be judged by the judge. Usually it was a minister in England. It was usually a religious authority. If they did not accept the judgment of the religious authority, they were declared outlaw. And at that point, it was dead or alive. So that's that whole wanted, dead or alive. So anybody could go kill that person because it was seen as you were relieving the society of somebody who has chosen to live outside of the laws of the society. So you were doing a favor to the other people because this person broke the social contract. So that's what he's saying. If your nafs is doing that, then that aspect of your nafs has become an outlaw, right? It's the uninvited guest that's disrupting the host's house, right? It's your abode. It's not your shahwa or your quwwat ghadabiyah's abode. It's your aql's abode. It's your heart's abode. That's what Allah, He's put your heart at the center of your being. And that's what's supposed to rule the roost. And if those other forces take over, you have to tame them. You have to bring them under control. And the pre-modern people, the ancients, did immense things to try to overcome them. Immense things. You read about the church fathers went off into the deserts. They would meditate and just trying to get rid of their appetites. And our tradition, our Prophet ﷺ, out of the mercy to humanity, gave us a much more balanced way. And that's one of the beauties of Islam, is that la rahbaniyata fil Islam. There's no monkhood in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, he married, he fasted, he broke his fast, right? He was the most balanced human being. But the devotional center of existence, if that's lost, then the enemies have taken over. Because we're not created here for frivolity. مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ مَا أُرِيدُ مِنْهُم مِّن رِزْقٍ. I didn't send you here for provision. Like, you get your provision, but that's not why you're here. So there's all these people, that's why they think that's why they're here, just to have their livelihoods and do that. But Allah says, no, I did not send you here for provision. That you have to do that. That's part of life. And the most intelligent people turn that into devotion. They do things, even for their livelihood, that have a devotional component. So then he says, but only don't kill the soul that Allah has sanctified except with right? So you don't want to, you have to be careful. And the best thing, I mentioned the other day about وَاسْلُكْ بِنَفْسِكَ سَبِيلَ الرِّفْقِ لِكَيْ يَكُونَ سَيْرُهَا بِالشَّوْقِ. Go easy on yourself so that your journey is with yearning. Because if you break the soul, then you've broken the beast that's supposed to take you. If you break the nafs, soul, not the ruh, the nafs, that's your riding beast to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you don't want to break it. You want to tame it. And this is what siyasa is. That's the essence of siyasa. Siyasa is to train an animal. So that's what governing is being able to herd cats.